Hey guys, Chris Burns here with another coffee chat, and joining me today is Ashley, and we're probably going to talk about the subject that we get asked more often than not. Not just can I retire, but can I retire early?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think, Chris? What is the most important thing to analyze whenever it's time to consider retiring early?
So when we say retiring early, let's kind of define that, right? Because retiring early to me is like today, all right? And some people are like sometime prior to the age of 65 when the Medicare will kick in. So the biggest thing that I think of when someone is like in there like, hey, I want to retire at 55 or 58. First question is, how are we going to take care of health care from date of retirement to 65?
Mm-hmm. And that's a good point to make, right?
Well, you and I talk about it a lot. One of the biggest things that can throw off a retirement plan is
Expenses.
a medical expense that they were not prepared for. And a lot of people who are looking at going into retirement probably have been on some type of their employers' healthcare, so they haven't had to go out into the marketplace and shop at what current rates are at.
And it's expensive.
It is very expensive. And one of the things too is nice to put together a list. So like when I sit down with clients, and you do the same thing, when we sit down, they say, hey, look, I've got a retirement age in mind, and this is how much time I've got to connect those dots. We've talked about healthcare as a big thing. Two, from an income standpoint, most people are living longer, and so an average retirement at normal retirement age is 25 to 30 years. So we may even need to make that money work longer for them. So what are some things when you sit down and the client is trying to formulate a retirement early, what are some things that you want to make sure that they're checking the box for, and things that you want to see them give you to build off of?
I think it's important that they have an outline and a realistic idea of what their expenses are going to be. And you should also count for inflation whenever you write down those expenses, because what it costs you to live today isn't going to be the same in 10 years. And I think that that's important when people, consider retiring early. They have to make it through that. So I think,
like you said, with inflation is extremely important for someone who's planning on being retired for that 20 to 30 year. If you're trying to be retired even longer than that, I would say let's use an inflation number that's higher than what's currently available, so that we know that inflation may trend itself upwards during that time frame.
That's all it's done historically.
Yep.
So,
and talking about inflation right now, we are at really all-time highs for people who are 40 and below, and so they're saying, well, what is that going to look like for me as I move forward?
Exactly.
Well, looking at someone who says, okay, I've got 10 years before I retire, and they have we've taken into inflation, they've taken care of their healthcare needs. Anything else that jumps off the table for you?
Probably multiple streams of income. I think it's important that they know where they should pull money from at different points in their retirement.
So when you say multiple income streams, I want to make sure that the audience understands that. We're not talking about having multiple accounts that are invested inside the stock market to draw from. Now that could be a good starting point, having some that's pre-tax and some that's post-tax if you've done some type of tax strategies to help you have some income, but also uncorrelated income from the market. Maybe that's some type of insurance product. Maybe you're going to have some real estate, some rental properties, or you're going to lease a building or a business. But things like that really can help take off some strain of making sure that just a market account is going to provide all of your income needs moving into the retirement.
Exactly. You want to make sure that your assets are diversified, and that if the market's not doing so hot, that you might have somewhere to pull those assets from, or somewhere to pull assets from later in life. And that's something that a lot of people don't consider. So that's definitely something that you need to look at, that safety bucket.
Right. And then normally when people want to retire early, one of the things they talk about is, well, I'll just start taking Social Security at day one as soon as I'm eligible to take it. And you can run the charts and see what does it look like from taking Social Security day one or waiting all the way to age 70, what that'll look like. But one of the things too that is, yes, I want to take Social Security early, but is that maybe the best bet for you if you're trying to retire early? Is maybe there's some still tax strategies you can accomplish and push Social Security back a little bit further?
So a lot of times it's more beneficial for you to start that Social Security later in life so that you can get more. And also lower income in the beginning of retirement makes it a good time to do Roth conversions and start different tax strategies as well. So it just depends on which level you're at and what your next step's going to be.
So when people that want to sit down and retire early, we have those conversations. Obviously, from a financial advising standpoint, if you give me 10 years, I can fix just about anything or get just about anything prepared so that we have a parameter to work with. As the viewers out there are listening or are getting to that window, they're saying, Ashley, Chris, I'm already within that 10-year window. Sitting down and putting your plan on paper and starting to stress test that against, some known variables gets even more important because the less amount of time that you have between now and retirement is definitely going to affect how aggressive or risk averse, depending on which way you are, as you need to be in the market. So saying, okay, I've got 5 years left. Well, that almost says, hey, this is the amount of income that I'm taking into retirement, because you're going to have to start getting a little bit more conservative each year you get to retirement. So that 10-year windows we talk about, I think that's kind of the sweet spot. So some clients or people that listen to us to say, well, hey, we're mostly a retirement firm. I'm looking at retiring early, but maybe I'm too young to have that conversation with you. I would say take your age that you want to retire, subtract 10 years. That's when you really need to start having some of those real conversations. And if you're a very detailed individual, I would say an extra few, take a look at 12 years out or 14 years out. The more time frame you give yourself and the team to build a plan.
Prepare.
Exactly. And so we mentioned taxes, we mentioned income streams, we mentioned healthcare. I think it would be a good thing to close on this conversation is also taking a look at your estate planning. And most people think of estate planning as post-death. So why do I bring it up with wanting to retire early? Right now, if you're about to start having that conversation about retire early, you're about to start putting all this data together. And so what is the number one thing that you see get left and talked about last?
Probably beneficiaries and how you want your assets allocated. If anything, in contingent beneficiaries, I think that's something very important that we don't stress enough. So definitely having an idea of where you want your assets allocated and then getting a trust and getting them put in the trust name, that can streamline everything and make it easier for you towards the end of life, give you peace of mind as well as your family.
And why is that good to accomplish while you're going through that conversation of seeing if you can retire early? What's the benefit of doing the estate plan during that time frame?
Honestly, it's all very much correlated, and we use a lot of that same information, and it's a good time. It kind of kills or two birds with one stone, if that makes sense. And it's just a good opportunity while you have everything out there, where all of your assets are allocated, and that's good to have in the trust as well. And we find that, some people, they lose track of even where their assets are held, and they'll come in with a big binder with all of these accounts. And so whenever you're looking at consolidating those, it's a good time to look at your trust so that you can make sure that you have all of your assets in the trust.
Ashley, thank you. That was a lot of great information.
Thank
also,
you.
I'm sure that might have generated some questions. So if you've got any questions, please comment on the video and we'll be sure that we can follow back up with you and get those answered. Once again, this is Chris Burns with Coffee Chat. Ashley, thanks for having us again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Y'all have a good day.